Let's come on to GB News and ARC.
Yeah, I just want to say I've been joining a few dots here, and I want to look at how GB News seem to be having their fingers in a lot of pies. So we start off with the eye that we're reporting. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that Boris Johnson will now have his own show on GB News, and of course, Boris and Nigel Farage equal Trump. But then we'll go on to the BBC report, and the BBC say that Ofcom are going to tell GB News not to stop hiring politicians. At the moment, Lee Anderson gets £100,000 a year. Esther McVey was getting $58,650. Philip Davis, Esther McVey's husband, $46,203 a year. And apparently Sir Jacob didn't reveal his earnings, but it doesn't take a lot. It's not rocket science to go and look at the government publication on expenses, employment and earnings. And you can see there that Jacob Rees-Mogg is looking at taking home approximately £30,000 a month. So let's look at Esther McVey, because of course Esther has now been appointed to the cabinet and she's the Minister of Common Sense. And she's had to leave GB News, of course, as a result. But you might remember Esther's great speech that she made for the vaccine damage. You can still see her speech on YouTube, where she speaks on the vaccine damage payments bill on the 20th of October 2023. And of course, she supported Andrew Bridgen in his recent debate. And of course, she's now had to, as I say, come off GB News. She was hosting a morning news programme with her husband, Philip Davis, who's also an MP, and she was earning a pretty penny. So let's look at her earnings according to the government employment and earnings. And you can see there that she was earning a pretty penny too. So let's look at GB News, because they splash out a lot of cash, as you can see. So who are their investors? We've talked about Legatum before, but I just want to talk about Legatum a little bit more in depth. Legatum means gift, and they're actually funded by anonymous donations. But in their portfolio, you can see there that you've got the Luminos Fund. And if we just go and look at the Luminos Fund and see if there's any involvement with anyone else, we can clearly see that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have been supporting the Luminos Fund, who are part of Legatum, who are part of GB News. So who runs Legatum? Well, Legatum is a Dubai-based company, but it's run by a New Zealand-born businessman called Christopher Chandler. Now, he hit the headlines. This was a long time ago, back in 2018, but he did hit the headlines for some claims that he was involved with Moscow intelligence and that he was a Russian spy. He denied all claims, obviously, but, you know, as we've said before, with Brian and I's interview coming up, there's no smoke without fire. So that took me into looking a little bit deeper into Legatum and into Sir Paul Marshall and Christopher Chandler. And I've just found this article on the 9th of November from The Guardian, which says that Barnaby Joyce, an MP, was amongst the politicians gifted a trip to Jordan Peterson's led Conservative conference. Now, this was backed by Sir Paul Marshall and Legatum. So if we just go a little bit further to look at who else is involved in ARC, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, because they've just recently had their conference that was led by Jordan Peterson, we can see that Michael Gove also is involved in ARC alongside Kemi Badenoch. So who are ARC? Well, if you go to YouTube, you can find a nice little trailer. There's they're called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. Sorry, that's the first slide there, just to point you in the direction to their website. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and ARC stands for Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And they've got a nice little YouTube, which you can go and look at in length, called Hope in the Age of Permacrisis. But let's take a very short little look at who ARC are.
We at the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship do not believe that humanity is necessarily and inevitably teetering on the brink of apocalyptic disaster. We do not believe that we are beings primarily motivated by lust for power and the desire to dominate. We do not regard ourselves or our fellow citizens as destructive forces living in an alien relationship to the pristine and pure natural world.
There are a series of narratives out there, these stories that we're telling ourselves, that are actually determining a lot of our global behavior. And you see your children coming home fearful about the future.
There is an epidemic mental health crisis worldwide, in great part due to the breakdown of the social fabric and confusion over values, where economic prosperity, work, and materialism is prioritized over family.
The breakdown of all of these social connections is related to a vision of the human being, which sees the person as just a consumer, criticizing humans for being parasites on the world. We have the possibility of formulating a different vision of humans.
The rejection of our traditional beliefs have not produced viable alternative narratives. We must reinvigorate our sense of citizenship. We must encourage one another to serve, to step up, to lead with courage wherever leadership is needed. The ARC network that I am a part of will seek to address these goals and more.
ARC is emerging already as a wonderful community of people who are just full of hope for the way forward and want to bring in a different culture and a different vision for where we can go as a people.
There is a greater narrative that we can all chime in on for the things that we all want together, which is human flourishing, human prosperity, human well-being, all moored to hope.
We posit that men and women of faith and decisiveness, made in the image of God, can arrange their affairs with care and attention. Welcome aboard the Ark.
Sounds great, right? So let's just have a quick look at some of their huge advisory board. So I've just picked out a few. So we've got Paul Marshall, GB News, ARC Schools, Alan McCormack, Legatum Partner, Chairman of GB News, Christopher Chandler, Founder of Legatum, Jordan Peterson, Clinical Psychologist. Then if we go to the next slide, you'll see Danny Kruger, MP, Miriam Cates, MP, Baroness Morrissey, Nims Obunga, who's a Deputy Lieutenant for King Charles, CEO of Peace Alliance, and also Tony Abbott, the 28th Prime Minister of Australia. So that's where GB News seem to be spreading their tentacles.
Yes, okay. I think we'll have a lot more to say about that in extra. So thank you, Debbie. Let's go back